who's one of the greatest rock and roll poets, we've ever had. And when you listen to that beautiful poetry and the way he tells a story with his lyric, and then you start listening to the music, and then you familiarize yourself with Johnny Johnson, you start realizing what the perfect storm is. The classic riff. If you listen to a piano player start out as a fast rock and roll type blues, how does he start it? Da 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 da. And you realize Johnny Johnson's right hand influenced greatly that guitar riff. And his playing over those words and those changes, and you realize a lot of the songs are in B flat, which is a great piano key. And you realize that the way he played and the way he sang and the way the music kind of just fell together really was a perfect storm of influence. His ability to write words over simple chord changes that just painted such a beautiful picture, and his collaboration, whether he liked it or not, with Johnny Johnson. There's a point in a band's trajectory where the undeniable rises up and is the star. If you're the singer, you're the writer, you're the face, you're the market, you're the brand. Johnny was a smart guy. He wasn't going to just go, well, hey, we got to keep this the Johnny Johnson group, when Chuck clearly was the breakout star. And you saw that with James Brown's band, where he was basically invited in after he was in prison, by his friend. And then he just was so undeniable. It became James Brown in the Famous Flames. And the same thing with Chuck, And that early group, those early recordings, I don't think they get enough credit, for creating that sound. I mean, Chuck used pickup bands for the rest of his life, but with that initial group that was coming out of St. Louis was incredibly special. And I don't think, like we talked about, I don't think there would have been a Chuck Berry without a Johnny Johnson, and those early days where he established himself as the star. I think Chess Records was important to a lot of people's career. I mean, I think the fact that a lot of these artists found a home and a marketplace for the type of music that they were playing. I mean, you could say, how important was Chess Records to Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all the Chicago guys, but the importance of regional labels. Where now everything is an international conglomerate. Back in the days, they had regional labels servicing regions of music. Like this stuff is popular in Chicago, and you drive down I-55 into St. Louis, and it's all an extended marketplace. And they're all talking about the same things. They're all living the same life. They're all having the same life problems. And that was relating to the people that were also, the fans that were actually going to the dance halls and relating to the same things. You could say the same thing about Stax and Fame Studios and Muscle Shoals and all that. They were servicing a region of the United States that was being underserviced by the Frank Sinatras of the day, the big Hollywood stars. There was these regional labels, and Chess being one of them, just happened to have some of the most incredibly influential, not only blues but early rock and roll, and so once you have that stamp of approval, once you have other artists finding fame and fortune on a label, being on a label like Chess would have been extremely, very important and very, validating to an artist, any artist like Chuck or who, it didn't matter. First introduction to Chuck Berry was Keith Richards' film. Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll introduced a lot of my generations, the Generation X or whatever you want to call us, people grew up in the 80s and 90s. We were introduced to Chuck Berry's music, legacy, faults, genius, D all of the above by watching Keith Richards put together a film at the Fox Theater in St. Louis. And, you know, because Keith Richards goes, I just want to see a great Chuck Berry gig, you know? And I'm going to be selfish and bring in Steve Jordan and Robert Cray and, you know, and my cast of, you know, ringers to make sure that the backing band is you know, wonderful and pay tribute to the man on his 60th birthday. And that to me, you know, was my introduction to Maybelline. That was my introduction to, you know, Roll Over Beethoven. That was my introduction to all of it, you know. And the backstory, you know, the arguing, you know, the one with the bend, you know, he's going after Keith, you know, it's either the proper way, you know, and Keith has been, to 99.9% of the public, it's like, oh, what's the difference? It's semantics. But when you got down to it and you got deep into the music, Chuck was right. And Keith would probably admit that. But it's so unorthodox, but just the way he played, you know. And he knew, even at that point, how important his legacy was. But he also had a chip on his shoulder about it. You know, he felt that, you know, who are these English rock star, millionaire, you know, Rolling Stone types telling me how to play the music that I invented, you know? And you see a lot of those guys from the 50s like that. They were very, you know, some of them like, you know, B.B. King, Muddy Waters, they were very appreciative of the English giving them a stage and a rebirth, but some of them had a chip on their shoulder. You know, you stole my act and you sold it to a much wider audience than I could ever sell it. And it was partly a race thing, it was partly, you know, a British thing. You know, I mean, people in America embraced British music regardless of where it came from. And a lot of times didn't have any clue that the Rolling Stones were playing straight up Chuck Berry songs, you know. They didn't know who Chuck Berry was, you know. And so, you know, there was a lot of undercurrent. There was a lot going on, but my introduction to him was through Keith's film, which I thought was brilliant, really brilliant.